For 2 decades, NASA faced a critical problem. The International Space Station was slowly falling back to Earth, and 80% of the missions keeping it alive came from one country, Russia. What happens when that partnership becomes unreliable? SpaceX's Dragon just fired its engines for over 19 minutes, pushing 420 tons of metal through space. This wasn't a test. This was the fifth reboost of a single mission, and there's more coming. How did a capsule weighing less than 3% of the station become NASA's solution to a dependency they couldn't escape? Let's dive right in. Back in 2008, SpaceX was dying. 3 Falcon 1 rockets had exploded. The financial crisis had drained their funding. Elon Musk poured his last dollars into one final launch. If it failed, the company would close its doors forever. September 28, 2008. Falcon 1 ignited for the 4th time. This time, it didn't explode. It reached orbit. The first privately funded liquid fuel rocket to ever do so. Within weeks, NASA called. They offered SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to supply the International Space Station. That phone call saved the company. But here's what nobody predicted back then. SpaceX wouldn't just deliver cargo. They would solve a problem NASA had been stuck with for 20 years. On December 29, 2024, Dragon fired its thrusters for 19 minutes and 34 seconds straight. The engines burned without stopping, pushing against 420 metric tons of station mass. This wasn't the first time Dragon had done this. It was the 5th reboost of the same mission, with one more planned before undocking. 6 reboosts. 5 months docked. One spacecraft doing work that used to require multiple Russian vehicles. Why does the ISS even need reboosts? At 250 miles up, you'd think there's no air. But there is. The upper atmosphere is incredibly thin, but it's there. Every molecule that hits the station slows it down. The ISS loses about 100 meters of altitude every single day. That's a football field dropping into nothing every 24 hours. Without constant reboosts, the station would spiral down and burn up in the atmosphere within months. This isn't optional maintenance. This is survival. For over 2 decades, Russia's Progress spacecraft handled 80% of these reboosts. Progress became the station's lifeline. When Progress launches got delayed, NASA had to scramble. When political tensions rose between the US and Russia, NASA realized they had a serious vulnerability. What happens when you depend on another country to keep your $150 billion space station from falling out of the sky? NASA knew they needed an American solution. But building orbital propulsion capability isn't simple. The spacecraft needs to dock safely, carry cargo, survive for months in space, and push hundreds of tons without breaking apart. For years, no commercial vehicle could do all of that. Dragon changed everything. The capsule itself is just 4 meters across. Add the trunk section and you get 8 meters total length. Fully loaded at launch, the entire vehicle weighs about 12,000 kilograms. Now here's the stunning part. This 12-ton spacecraft is pushing a 420-ton station. Dragon weighs less than 3% of what it's moving. How is that even possible? It comes down to propulsion design. SpaceX installed a dedicated reboost kit in Dragon's trunk, completely separate from the capsule's main thrusters. 2 Draco engines face backward, opposite the station's direction of travel. Each engine delivers 400 newtons of thrust. Combined output, 800 newtons. These engines burn hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. These are hypergolic propellants, meaning they ignite on contact. No spark plugs, no ignition system, just instant combustion the moment fuel and oxidizer meet. That's reliability you can count on in space. 6 fuel tanks sit in the trunk, plus a helium pressurant tank that keeps propellant flowing smoothly to the engines. This entire system is independent from Dragon's primary fuel reserves. That means every minute of reboost burn doesn't touch the fuel needed for docking, undocking, or returning to Earth. Dragon can fire its reboost engines for extended periods without compromising any other mission function. During that December 29th burn, Dragon ran for over 19 minutes continuously. That single burn increased the station's velocity by 9 meters per second. In everyday terms, that's about 20 miles per hour. Doesn't sound like much, right? In orbital mechanics, it's massive. That one burn delivered 1.5 times the effect of a typical Progress reboost. Across the full 5-month mission, Dragon will handle between 25% and 33% of the ISS's yearly altitude maintenance. One spacecraft, one mission, covering a third of what used to require constant Russian support. But Dragon does something else no other ISS cargo vehicle can do. It comes home. Russia's Progress burns up after undocking. Gone forever. Northrop Grumman's Cygnus? Same thing. Japan's HTV? Incinerated on re-entry. Every other cargo ship is one way only. Once they leave the station, everything inside is lost. Dragon has a heat shield. It has parachutes. It survives re-entry and splashes down in the ocean, bringing back up to 3,000 kilograms of cargo. NASA uses this to return science experiments, biological samples, and hardware that must be analyzed on Earth. No other option exists. So Dragon carries 6,000 kilograms up and brings 3,000 kilograms back, all while performing the same propulsion work that used to require dedicated Russian spacecraft. That's not just capability, that's flexibility NASA desperately needed. None of this works without Falcon 9. The rocket stands 70 meters tall and can lift 22,800 kilograms to low Earth orbit in expendable mode. When SpaceX recovers the first stage, payload capacity drops to about 17,000 kilograms. That's still more than enough margin to launch Dragon, fully loaded with cargo, extra fuel, and the reboost propulsion kit. Falcon 9 has completed over 300 orbital launches. Success rate above 98%. More than 90% of those launches now end with the booster landing itself. Some individual boosters have flown over 20 times. 20 missions on one rocket. That was science fiction a decade ago. This reuse drops costs dramatically. Falcon 9 launches cost about $67 million. Traditional expendable rockets often exceed $100 million per launch and can only fly once. SpaceX's system costs less and flies more often. That's why NASA can afford frequent Dragon missions. But having a capable spacecraft isn't enough if your launch system fails. Boeing learned this the hard way. Starliner's first uncrewed test in December 2019 didn't reach the ISS. The second attempt in May 2022 made it to the station, but suffered thruster shutdowns and thermal problems. Then came the crewed mission in 2024. After reaching orbit, multiple thrusters degraded. Helium leaks appeared in the propulsion system. Helium pressurizes the fuel lines. Without it, the capsule can't maneuver or safely deorbit. NASA looked at the data and made a decision. Too risky to bring the astronauts home in Starliner. The capsule returned to Earth empty. The crew stayed on the ISS for 9 months, far beyond their planned mission duration. Eventually, SpaceX launched a Crew Dragon to bring them home. It worked perfectly. That's the difference between a system that works on paper and one that works in reality. Dragon has now proven itself not just as a cargo hauler or crew transport, but as critical space infrastructure. The ISS depends on it, NASA depends on it, and Russia no longer holds the keys to keeping the station in orbit. 20 years. That's how long NASA waited for this moment. A moment where an American spacecraft could keep the International Space Station alive without needing Russian approval, Russian schedules, or Russian cooperation. Dragon didn't just perform a reboost. It broke a dependency that made the entire ISS program vulnerable. Every 19-minute burn, every successful mission, Every safe splashdown proves that commercial space isn't the future anymore. It's the present, and it's working better than the old system ever did. In 2008, SpaceX had one last chance to survive. One rocket, one launch. If it failed, the company would disappear. Today, that same company is keeping humanity's only space station in orbit. From nearly bankrupt to mission-critical infrastructure in just 16 years. The ISS is still up there right now, orbiting at 17,500 miles per hour. Dragon is docked to it, ready for the next reboost. Russia's Progress still flies, but NASA doesn't depend on it anymore. That changes everything. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and share this video with anyone who thinks space is just about rockets and explosions. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Dragon's new role. And if you want to stay updated on every major development in space technology, subscribe to Space Update 24 hours and turn on notifications. We break down the missions that actually matter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. The International Space Station has ruled orbit for over 25 years, a symbol of global collaboration and human endurance. But between 2021 and 2022, China did something that caught everyone off guard. They assembled a complete 3-module space station in just 18 months. Tiangong's lab modules stretch nearly 60 feet each, more than double the length of the ISS's Destiny lab. Inside, it's spotless, minimalist, almost sterile. Why does China's station look more like a tech showroom than a spacecraft? And what technology is hidden behind those clean white panels that no other orbital outpost has ever carried? Let's dive right in. Before Tiangong, China's space ambitions were modest. Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2 were single-module testbeds, proof-of-concept labs that barely scratched the surface. Then April 2021 marked a turning point. The Tianhe core module launched aboard a Long March 5B, China's heavy-lift workhorse. At 16.6 meters long and 4.2 meters wide, Tianhe became the brain, the power source, and the living quarters all in one. 15 months later, Wentian docked, a second lab module with an airlock for spacewalks. 3 months after that, Mengtian completed the T-shaped configuration. 3 massive modules, 3 precise dockings, 18 months total. The ISS took over a decade and 40 launches to assemble. The speed wasn't reckless. It was surgical precision backed by years of ground testing. Every robotic arm movement, every docking sequence, every power connection was rehearsed in simulators before a single module left Earth. What makes this approach significant isn't just the timeline, it's the philosophy. China built redundancy into every system from day one, learning from decades of submarine engineering where isolation and fail-safes mean survival. This isn't a space station cobbled together through international compromise.